Imagine walking home at dusk through the French countryside, when suddenly, a creature larger than any wolf you've ever seen emerges from the shadows. Its eyes glow like embers. Its jaws could crush a human skull in one bite. And it's already killed over 100 people. This isn't a legend. This actually happened. And what they discovered about the Beast of Gévaudan will haunt you forever. June 30th, 1764. A young shepherdess named Jean Boulette tends her cattle in the hills of south-central France. The sun hangs low, painting the landscape in amber light. Everything seems peaceful, normal, but then she hears it, a low, guttural growl that doesn't sound like any animal she knows. She turns, and there it is, a massive creature, rust-colored, with a stripe running down its back, eyes that seem almost intelligent, almost human. She screams. The cattle scatter, and the beast lunges. What happened next would spark one of history's most terrifying and mysterious chapters, a reign of terror that would grip an entire region for 3 years and baffle even the King of France himself. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we dive deep into history's darkest mysteries, the stories that textbooks skip over, the ones that keep you up at night wondering what really happened. And today's story? It's absolutely wild. We're talking about the Beast of Gévaudan, a creature that terrorized the French countryside in the 1760s, killing between 100 and 300 people, depending on historical accounts. But here's where it gets really interesting. Was it actually a wolf? A hyena? A lion escaped from a traveling circus? Or something far more sinister? Something deliberately trained to kill? By the end of this video, you'll know the full story, the shocking theories, and the evidence that historians are still debating today. And trust me, the ending is not what you'd expect. So hit that subscribe button, because we're about to go on a journey into one of history's most bizarre unsolved mysteries. Let's set the scene. We're in Gévaudan, a remote, mountainous province in south-central France, now part of the modern-day Lazare department. Picture thick forests, isolated farms, winding paths through valleys where wolves have always been a problem. But the people here are used to wolves. They know how to defend against them. They know their patterns, their behavior. What was about to happen was something completely different. That first attack on Jean Boulette? Incredibly, she survived. Her bulls formed a protective circle around her, driving the creature away. She was one of the lucky ones. Because just weeks later, on June 30th, 1764, a 14-year-old girl named Jean Juve wasn't so fortunate. She became the beast's first confirmed victim, killed while tending cattle near the village of Les Hubacs. The way she was killed was disturbing. Witnesses who found her body described wounds unlike anything they'd seen from wolf attacks. The throat wasn't just torn, it was surgically removed, almost precise, almost calculated. And this was just the beginning. Through July and August of 1764, the attacks multiplied. A 15-year-old boy, a 36-year-old woman, another teenager. The pattern was chilling. The beast seemed to prefer women and children, attacking them in broad daylight, which was completely abnormal for wolves. Normal wolves are afraid of humans, especially adults. They avoid confrontation. But this creature? It hunted humans like prey, deliberately, systematically, and with a level of aggression that suggested something far beyond natural animal behavior. The descriptions from survivors and witnesses started piling up, and they were remarkably consistent. This wasn't mass hysteria or exaggeration. People from different villages who had no contact with each other all described the same thing. A creature the size of a cow, though shaped like a wolf. Reddish-brown fur with a dark stripe running along its spine. A massive head with small, straight ears unlike the pointed ears of wolves. A tail longer and bushier than any wolf they'd ever seen. Powerful chest and shoulders. And those eyes, multiple witnesses talked about those eyes. Some said they were almost hypnotic. Others said they seemed intelligent, calculating, like the creature was studying them. One survivor, a young man named Jacques Portefaix, gave an account that sent chills through the entire region. He and 6 other children were attacked while guarding cattle. Jacques organized the children into a tight group, armed with sticks and knives. They fought the beast for over 30 minutes. Think about that. This creature didn't flee after the first resistance like a normal predator would. It circled them, testing their defenses, looking for weakness. Eventually, villagers heard the screams and came running, and only then did the beast retreat into the forest. King Louis XV himself heard about Jacques' bravery and awarded him money to continue his education. But the fact that a group of children had to fight for their lives in broad daylight, that terrified everyone. By autumn of 1764, the death toll was rising fast. 10 confirmed kills. 20. The attacks were relentless, and panic spread like wildfire through Gévaudan. Churches were packed with people praying for protection. Parents refused to let children work in the fields. The economy started suffering because people were literally too afraid to leave their homes. And the French government? They were starting to pay attention. When news of the beast reached Versailles, King Louis XV couldn't ignore it. This wasn't just about peasants being killed in some remote province anymore. This was about the crown's authority, about whether the king could protect his subjects. If he couldn't stop one animal, what did that say about his power? So in September 1764, he sent Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel with a detachment of soldiers to hunt down and kill the beast. Now, Duhamel was a professional, a military man. He arrived with confidence, certain this would be a quick operation. Hunt down a wolf, kill it, problem solved. He organized massive hunts, assembling hundreds of local men to sweep through the forests. They killed wolves. Lots of wolves. Over a dozen in the first few weeks alone. Each time, Duhamel would report back that the beast was dead, that the terror was over. And each time, within days, another body would be found. Throat torn out. The same distinctive wounds. The same calculated brutality. The attacks continued through the winter of 1764, and they were getting worse. The beast seemed to be getting bolder, more confident. It attacked people on roads, in villages, sometimes within sight of their homes. On January 12, 1765, a pregnant woman was killed. On April 7th, a woman named Jean Bastide was attacked in her own garden. She fought back ferociously with a bayonet, actually managing to wound the creature, but it still killed her before escaping. Here's what made this absolutely terrifying. The beast seemed to have intelligence. It learned areas that were heavily patrolled. It avoided them. Hunters setting up ambushes. It somehow knew, taking routes that avoided the traps. Some attacks seemed almost strategic, like it was testing the humans' responses, seeing how they would react. Paranoia reached fever pitch. Some villagers started believing this wasn't an animal at all. They whispered about werewolves, about demonic possession, about punishment from God for the sins of the region. Captain Duhamel spent 6 months hunting the beast and failed completely. Humiliated, he was recalled to Paris. But the king wasn't giving up. In February 1765, he sent someone with a bigger reputation, François Antoine, the royal huntsman. This was the king's personal gamekeeper, a man who had hunted wolves all over France, a true expert. If anyone could kill the beast, it would be Antoine. Antoine arrived with his son and a team of experienced hunters. He approached this scientifically, methodically. He interviewed survivors, studied the attack patterns, examined the terrain. He brought in dozens of trained hunting dogs. He organized hunts that involved hundreds of participants, creating human chains to drive the beast toward waiting marksmen. And for months, nothing. The beast continued killing, mocking their efforts. On June 11, 1765, it killed a 15-year-old boy. On August 17th, a woman. The death toll kept climbing, and Antoine was running out of ideas. But then, on September 21st, 1765, everything changed. Antoine's hunters cornered a massive wolf near the Royal Abbey of Chazes. It was enormous, weighing over 130 pounds, far larger than any normal wolf in France. When they killed it and cut it open, they found what they believed was proof: human remains in its stomach. Antoine was convinced this was the beast. He had the wolf stuffed and sent to Versailles, where it was displayed for the king. Louis XV declared the beast dead. The case was closed. Antoine was rewarded and praised throughout France. Victory. Except it wasn't over. Not even close. For 2 months after Antoine killed the giant wolf, there were no attacks. 2 peaceful months. People started to believe it was finally over, that they could return to normal life. Children went back to herding cattle. Women walked to market alone. Life resumed. And then, on December 2nd, 1765, the nightmare came roaring back. 2 children were attacked near a village. Same wounds, same pattern, same terror. The beast had returned. Or maybe it had never left. Maybe Antoine had killed the wrong animal. This realization sent shockwaves through Gévaudan. If the royal huntsman himself, with all his expertise and resources, couldn't stop the beast, then what hope did anyone have? The attacks through 1766 and into 1767 were even more savage than before. It was as if the beast was angry, as if it was punishing the humans for daring to think they had one. On August 18, 1766, it killed 3 people in a single day. 3. That's not animal behavior. That's not even predator behavior. Predators kill for food, for territory, for defense. This was something else. This seemed like murder for the sake of murder. The descriptions of the beast during this period started including even stranger details. Some witnesses claimed it made sounds unlike any animal, almost like laughter. Others swore they saw it walking on its hind legs for short distances. A group of hunters claimed they shot it multiple times at close range, saw it fall, but when they approached, it got up and ran away as if barely hurt. Were these exaggerations? Fear playing tricks on traumatized minds? Or was there something genuinely unusual about this creature? One account from this period is particularly haunting. A woman named Marie-Jeanne Vallée was crossing a stream when the beast attacked her. She was armed with a bayonet-tipped spear, and when the creature lunged at her throat, she thrust the blade directly into its chest. She said she felt the blade sink deep, saw blood pour from the wound. The beast howled, staggered back, and fled into the forest. She was certain she'd delivered a fatal wound. But 2 days later, the beast killed someone else on the other side of the region. Marie-Jeanne became a local hero, one of the few people to injure the beast and live to tell about it. But her story raised disturbing questions. What kind of animal could survive a blade through the chest and continue hunting just days later? By mid-1767, the official death toll was approaching 100 victims. The unofficial count, including attacks that weren't properly documented or people who died from their injuries weeks later, might have been twice that. Gévaudan was traumatized. An entire generation of children grew up in fear, never feeling safe, always looking over their shoulders. The psychological damage was immense. And still, the beast roamed free. Enter Jean Chastel. Now, Chastel is where this story gets really interesting, really controversial, and honestly really dark. He was a local farmer and hunter, someone who knew the forests of Gévaudan intimately. He'd lived there his entire life. And here's where the theories start to get wild, because some historians believe Chastel knew more about the beast than he ever admitted. Some believe he was connected to it, and some believe, well, we'll get to that. On June 19th, 1767, a massive hunt was organized. Over 300 men assembled, including Jean Chastel and his sons. They formed lines across the forest, preparing to drive the beast toward waiting hunters. Chastel positioned himself on the slopes of Mount Mouchet, near a clearing. He was alone, sitting on a rock, reading his prayer book. And that's when it appeared. According to Chastel's own account, the beast emerged from the trees and stopped about 30 feet away. It didn't attack. It just stared at him. He said it sat down, like a dog waiting for a command. He calmly closed his prayer book, picked up his rifle, and aimed. The beast didn't move, didn't react, just watched him. He fired 2 shots. The first struck the beast in the chest, near the shoulder. The second hit it in the head. It died almost instantly. Now, here's what makes this so strange. Chastel didn't seem surprised, didn't seem excited or scared. He calmly reloaded his rifle, approached the creature, and declared it dead. No celebration. No calling for help right away. Just calm acceptance. Like he'd expected this exact outcome. When other hunters arrived, they found Chastel standing over the body, completely composed, as if he'd just killed a rabbit instead of the creature that had terrorized the region for 3 years. The body was examined immediately. It was a large canine, yes, but was it a wolf? The descriptions varied wildly. Some said it was clearly a wolf, just abnormally large. Others insisted its features were wrong. The teeth too long, the claws too curved, the head shaped differently. They opened its stomach, and this is where things get really disturbing. Inside, they found the remains of a young girl's arm, including fragments of her sleeve. She'd been killed weeks earlier. The beast had been carrying this inside it all that time. The body was transported from village to village, so people could see that the nightmare was finally over. But the summer heat of southern France did its work quickly. Within days, the corpse was decomposing rapidly, the smell becoming unbearable. By the time it might have reached Versailles for scientific examination, it was in such a state of decay that it had to be buried. Conveniently, this meant no royal scientists could examine it closely. No one could definitively say what species it was. And some people found that very suspicious. But here's the most important fact. After June 19, 1767, the attack stopped. Completely. Immediately. No more victims. No more sightings. Whatever that creature was, Chastel had killed it, and a 3-year reign of terror was finally over. So what was the Beast of Gévaudan? That's the question historians, zoologists, and cryptozoologists have been debating for over 250 years. And the theories? They range from perfectly rational to absolutely wild. Theory number 1. It was just a large wolf. Maybe an exceptionally big one, possibly suffering from disease or injury that made it more aggressive than normal. This is the official explanation favored by many scientists. The problem? Wolves don't typically prey on humans, especially not in broad daylight, and especially not with this level of consistency. In all of recorded European history, there are very few documented cases of healthy wolves actively hunting humans, and none that match the scale and pattern of the beast's attacks. Theory number 2. It was a pack of wolves, not a single animal. This would explain why killing one wolf didn't stop the attacks when Antoine shot that giant wolf. Different animals, different times, but reported as one creature because of panic and fear. The problem with this theory? The descriptions were too consistent. Hundreds of people described the same distinctive markings, the same unusual features. Unless they were all lying or all suffering identical hallucinations, this wasn't just some wolves. Theory number 3, and this is where it gets interesting. It was a wolf-dog hybrid. We know that wolves and domestic dogs can interbreed, creating animals with unusual characteristics and sometimes unpredictable behavior. A hybrid might explain the strange appearance, the size, and potentially the aggression. Some modern researchers have suggested this is the most likely explanation, especially if the hybrid had been raised around humans and lost its natural fear of them. Theory number 4. It was an exotic animal. Remember, the 18th century was the age of exploration. Wealthy nobles collected exotic animals. Circuses and traveling shows brought creatures from Africa and Asia to Europe. What if a lion, hyena, or some other predator escaped? The description of the beast's striped back, massive head, and unusual build does share similarities with hyenas. A striped hyena, unfamiliar with European humans and desperate for food, might behave exactly as the beast did. The problem? No one reported a missing exotic animal. And how would it survive French winters for 3 years? But then there's theory number 5. And this one is dark. This theory suggests the beast wasn't really an animal at all. It was trained, deliberately turned into a weapon. By whom? Well, several historians have pointed fingers directly at the Chastel family. Here's the evidence that makes this theory so disturbing. First, Jean Chastel had been arrested and imprisoned briefly in 1765 on suspicion of being connected to the beast. He was released due to lack of evidence, but the fact that authorities suspected him is significant. Second, he killed the beast with remarkable ease after 3 years of failed hunts by professional hunters and soldiers. How? Third, that strange moment when the beast just sat and stared at him before he shot it. That sounds a lot like a trained animal responding to its master. Fourth, Chastel showed no surprise, no emotion, no excitement when he killed it. And fifth, most damning of all, his son, Antoine Chastel, was known to be a skilled animal trainer who worked with wolves. The theory goes like this. What if the Chastels, possibly angry at local nobility or seeking revenge for some past grievance, trained one or more large dogs or wolf-dog hybrids to attack people? They could direct the attacks, control when and where they happened, and ensure the creature avoided being caught. This would explain the beast's intelligence, its seeming ability to evade traps, and why it stopped permanently after Jean Chastel killed it. Because it was the last of the trained animals, or because the killing was staged to end the operation before they were discovered. Is there proof? No, not definitive proof. But the circumstantial evidence is unsettling enough that serious historians take this theory seriously. And if it's true, then the Beast of Gévaudan wasn't a mystery of nature. It was one of history's earliest cases of terrorism using animals as weapons. That's absolutely chilling. The story of the beast didn't end with its death. In fact, in many ways, the legend was just beginning. The attacks and the mystery became embedded in French culture, inspiring novels, films, songs, and even video games. But beyond entertainment, there's been serious scientific investigation into what really happened. In 1995, French researchers were granted permission to study museum specimens potentially connected to the beast. They examined skulls and bones of large canines killed in Gévaudan during the 1760s. Using modern forensic techniques, they measured jaw structures, dental patterns, and bone density. Their conclusion? The animals were likely unusually large wolves, possibly suffering from genetic abnormalities that made them more aggressive. But this still doesn't fully explain the pattern of attacks or the behavioral anomalies. In 2009, a team of zoologists and historians conducted a comprehensive review of all available historical documents, survivor testimonies, and attack records. They created a database of every confirmed attack, mapping locations, times, victim demographics, and injury patterns. What they found was fascinating. The attacks showed clear patterns suggesting intelligence and learning. Early attacks were often unsuccessful, with victims escaping. Later attacks became more efficient, more lethal, as if the creature was learning from experience. This behavior is unusual for a simple predator, but consistent with either an exceptionally intelligent animal or, again, something deliberately trained. DNA studies have been proposed, but face obvious problems. The beast's body decomposed and was buried over 250 years ago. No preserved tissue samples exist. The stuffed wolf that Francois Antoine killed is in a museum, but it's the wrong animal. The attacks continued after it was killed. So modern science can theorize and analyze, but definitive proof remains elusive. What we do know is the impact on the region. Gévaudan suffered economically and psychologically for decades after the attacks ended. Population decreased as people moved away. The folklore and fear became part of local identity. Even today, you can visit the region and see monuments to victims, museums dedicated to the beast, and tours of locations where attacks occurred. The terror might have ended in 1767, but the memory lives on. And here's something that will give you chills. There have been similar cases throughout history. The wolves of Paris in the 15th century. The wolves of Perigord in the 18th century. The Champawat tiger in India in the early 20th century, which killed over 400 people. Man-eating lions of Njam in Tanzania. Nature occasionally produces predators that view humans as prey, breaking the normal rules of animal behavior. The Beast of Gévaudan might be the most famous European example, but it's not unique, which means somewhere, sometime, it could happen again. Even after all this research, all these theories, fundamental questions remain unanswered. And honestly, that's what makes this story so captivating. Let's go through what we still don't know for certain. Question 1. What species was the beast? Wolf, hybrid, exotic animal, or something else? We'll probably never know for sure without DNA evidence, which we don't have and likely never will. Question 2. Was it one animal or multiple? The 3-year span, The fact that attacks continued after several large wolves were killed, and the variation in some descriptions suggest possibly multiple animals. But the consistency in other details suggests one. Maybe it was one primary attacker with others occasionally involved? We don't know. Question 3. Why did it prefer women and children? About 70% of victims were women and children. Normal predators don't show this kind of preference. Was it because they were easier targets, alone more often, less able to defend themselves? Or was there something more deliberate, more sinister, especially if the trained animal theory is correct? Question 4. How did it survive being shot multiple times? Multiple witnesses reported shooting the beast at close range and seeing it run away. Were they exaggerating? Missing in panic? Or was the creature unusually resilient, possibly due to its size, thick fur, or angles of the shots? We don't know. Question 5. What was Gene Chastel's real connection to the beast? Was he just a lucky hunter who happened to be in the right place at the right time? Or was he intimately connected to the creature's existence? His behavior before, during, and after killing the beast suggests he knew more than he admitted. But what and why? He took those secrets to his grave. And here's the most haunting question of all. Could something like this happen again? We live in a modern world with better communication, weapons, and animal control. But we also have climate change pushing animals into new territories, habitat destruction forcing wildlife into human areas, and exotic pet ownership creating opportunities for dangerous animals to escape. Just in the past few decades, there have been cases of escaped big cats, abandoned exotic pets turning feral, and wildlife becoming unusually aggressive due to disease or desperation. The specific circumstances of Gévaudan were unique to its time and place, but the fundamental dynamic, large predator discovers humans are easy prey, that could absolutely happen again. Maybe not in France, maybe not with the same mystery and folklore, but somewhere, somehow, nature could produce another beast. So here's where we are. Between 1764 and 1767, something terrorized south-central France, killing somewhere between 100 and 300 people, depending on which historical record you trust. It might have been a wolf, a hybrid, an exotic animal, or potentially something deliberately trained by humans for revenge or terror. We may never know the complete truth. The physical evidence is gone, decomposed into soil centuries ago. All we have are stories, testimonies, theories, and unanswered questions. But here's what we do know for certain. It happened. Real people died. Real communities suffered. Real fear gripped an entire region for 3 years. Whether the beast was natural or created, animal or weapon, it was real. And the fact that we still don't have definitive answers more than 250 years later, that's what transforms this from a historical event into an eternal mystery. The Beast of Gévaudan reminds us that the world still holds secrets, that history still has chapters we haven't fully read, and that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened. It reminds us that nature is powerful, unpredictable, and occasionally terrifying. And it reminds us that humans, when threatened, will do anything to protect themselves, and when consumed by fear, will believe almost anything. The forests of what was once Gévaudan still stand today. They're peaceful now, popular with hikers and tourists. But on foggy evenings, when the light fades and shadows grow long between the trees, locals say you can still feel it. That old fear, that ancestral memory of when something hunted in those woods. Something that saw humans not as masters of nature, but as prey. The beast is dead, but the legend will never die. And maybe, just maybe, that's how it should be. Some mysteries are more powerful when they remain unsolved. Some stories are scarier when they don't have neat endings. And some questions are more important than their answers. What do you think? Was it just an animal, acting on instinct? Or was there something more sinister happening in those French forests? Drop your theory in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history's darkest mysteries, make sure you're subscribed because we have so many more stories like this to explore. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, The scariest monsters aren't always the ones in stories. Sometimes they're the ones in history books.